Welcome to Conversamos. My name is Francisco Escobar, and I'm the host and content creator of this show. Today, we'll be discussing about COVID-19, 1 year later. How has this pandemic affected the Latino population? How has local and federal government, past and present, responded to this pandemic? And where do we go from here? All here on Conversamos.
Yeah, yo, is it that wrong? I'm making a song, I'm taking it back for the platform that I formed. Music's helping me transform.
Before we begin, we would like to give a fundraising spotlight to Tampa Mutual Aid, a Florida-based fundraising initiative that seeks to support each woman of the Circle of Mothers of Tampa for a session of relaxation and restoration. Venmo them at mutualaid_pop-up. That is Tampa Mutual Aid _pop-up. Now, with our first question to our panelists, what is your COVID-19 experience thus far?
Before COVID, I had been out of work for a good 7 months. I got laid off from Chicago Public Schools due to budgetary reasons. So about 900 or so special education teachers just got let go because we had a new mayor. So from that point, just looking for work, ended up working at ACHE, a complete career shift because I had been working in teaching for so long. I haven't been in the corporate world in so many years. So I started in February, and then a couple weeks later, COVID-19 happens, cancels a lot of our events, shifts the whole office paradigm to virtual. And I've been flourishing in that realm. As far as just family-wise, though, because I am currently with my family, it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because we didn't know where to get our masks, best practices to maintain just health-wise, spraying our groceries. And yeah, just a constant fear, really. And then it really didn't hit for us until my step grandmother passed away due to COVID in Mexico, and that was because over there they were really not following any protocol. So she caught it, and within 72 hours she had passed away, and that really affected the whole family dynamic here. We were a lot more cautious. I mean, we were cautious, but we still hugged, we still did that kind of stuff within our own pod. After that, we did a full shift, made sure everyone is following the best practices as much as we could. And then so far, everyone's been healthy. I've received my first vaccine, Pfizer. And yeah, I'm just looking forward towards more of the future, and fingers crossed not another COVID-20 happens in my lifetime, or we can have the best practice possible for if that does happen, this year 2020 does not get repeated.
Let's see. Since COVID hit, I've been pretty much isolated. I really was only seeing my partner at the time. Then my sister was pregnant, and so I started spending time with her and her husband. My parents also spent some time with us. My parents are, immigrants, so they're very, very super cautious. We coming from anywhere, my mom already had a bottle of Purell to wipe your hands down and everything. So we have been pretty lucky. We did have one family member who was diagnosed with COVID. Luckily, they didn't have any strong symptoms where they needed to be hospitalized, or they just quarantined, and by the grace of God, all things turned out well with them. So we've been lucky in that aspect, and now my parents are vaccinated. So, hopefully soon, I'll get vaccinated myself. And looking forward to at some point later this year where we have the opportunity to have a bit more semblance of our former lives. But who knows how things are going right now. Cases on the uptick. So, just fingers crossed on everything.
If you hear helicopters and stuff, I live literally right next to our Capitol, and there's a lot of protests and stuff happening right now. So there's helicopters and sirens and a whole bunch of shit. So welcome to St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's been fucking crazy. So, like I said, I'm a caseworker and I live in St. Paul. Minneapolis is right across our river. 2 different counties, so fucking different. So I was used to being a teacher and doing educator. I was a science teacher and doing stuff in St. Paul. And St. Paul Public Schools was not paying me enough. So unfortunately, I was like, I need to move on. So I started a job right before the pandemic happened as a caseworker over in Minneapolis and in that county over there. And then 6 months later, and the George Floyd thing happens. And so that shut down a lot of, so the protests and riots and looting and everything took place on our north side and our south side of Minneapolis. And those are, the north side is predominantly a Black community and our south side is predominantly Latinx. There's Black folks, immigrants. It's like one of our most diverse areas of the city. All our groceries got shut down. All our grocery stores got shut down. Our buses got shut down. So everything that had kind of reopened a little bit or that was needed because of the pandemic was completely shut down. So now we have 2 crises happening. And I work with families that have youth in the juvenile justice system. And that requires a lot because usually they like housing, they just like food, just basic stuff like that, which in turn is why kids are on the verge of being in the justice system because they just kind of turn to the streets to do things. And the mayor was just not handling it very well. He just wasn't. And everyone looks at our mayor as like this liberal, amazing white man who is just doing so much. He's so young, he's so cute, he's so this. And I hate going on social media and seeing people from out of state look at him like he's like the best thing ever. He sucks. And so there was just a lot of protests and stuff happening with that. So for me, work never really stopped. It looked different because I was no longer able to go to the government center and go inside. Part of it was shut down, part of it was broken into. And so, again, it was just a lot happening. Families didn't really know what to do. Families were scared. The pandemic during these uprisings kind of got pushed to the side. We kind of forgot about it. It was just about community. So there was fires everywhere. Literally everything was on fire and the firefighters wouldn't come help us. So it got to the point where communities were literally getting together, carrying these big ass hoses down the street and just like putting out fires by ourselves. Cars were being broken into. So neighborhoods started doing like overnight shifts of like protecting each neighborhood, making sure that nothing was happening, because yes, it was a lot of us that were angry and a lot of us that have had it with the city, because the city has a lot of fucking racism. So when it comes to wealth disparities, education disparities, we're top 5 worst in the state. I think we're actually number 2. And people don't think of that because we're in the north and we always think of racism existing in the south. But no, we're terrible. And so this has been a thing that has been boiling to this point. And so I wasn't surprised because I'm someone that has been working with these issues for a while. But a lot of white people were surprised that this was happening. And because it was happening, there's a lot of people from out of town that were coming in and causing these destructions. So it was a lot. And now things they still kind of are bad. For my work right now, a lot of my clients need rent support, and that's the main thing, and it's really hard to find, but we're doing really well when it comes to vaccines. So as of this week, anyone 16 and up is eligible, and we have vaccines for almost everybody, so we're doing really good on that. At least my second one just a couple hours ago.
Yeah, you're a trooper. So thank you so much, Lupita, because you also highlight your local politics and such. So for my next question, how did not just the Trump administration handle COVID-19, but also how have your local politicians handled this pandemic?
Well, my experience, it was awful with Trump being in the office, and just, no guidance from the government on that end. As far as Chicago's politicians, I think they did fairly well. They closed everything. Whether or not that was good for our economy, that's another thing entirely. But as far as safety wise, I do think they did the right choice. I think they could have been improved on how we're doing like virtual schooling. But as far as our local politicians, I think they did really well.
I think I'll start on the local side first because it's still kind of ongoing. I think local-wise, with New York, well, I think Cuomo. I think there is the perception of how Cuomo did, especially in the beginning, and I think now that perception has changed. I think the veil has come down. First with the delay in shutting the state down and in closing schools. I think it was a week or so after, or a couple days after California, the decision to send COVID patients back to nursing homes and remove the liability shield from these corporations. And then everything else after, like, we keep finding out more and more about, him doing favors for his family and people associated with him by getting them their samples or getting them tests and then their samples to be transported by New York State troopers. Like, at a time when people in New York couldn't get a test. I remember when there were lines down the block for places to try to get in to get a test. And I think it's just been absolutely ridiculous. I think even now, I think many people can kind of see how things are going in New York, where for the longest time, it was like, all right, no movie theaters, no indoor group fitness classes. And with all these allegations and all, this political firestorm he's dealing with this, all of a sudden it's like, you can have your movie theaters, you can go back into classes. So it's been this kind of just really just the pit of political just corruption and how it's been handled in New York. On the outside, for many people, it has looked good, but there's just been so many things that have gone wrong in New York, like so many lives lost that didn't need to be lost. And I think I always look back on it like that, like people died who didn't have to die. Or whether you want to look at like, oh, Cuomo did this wrong, this, that, in the end, people died that didn't have to die, And I look at on the overall scale when it comes to Trump, it's kind of the same thing. People died who didn't have to die. However you look at Trump and the things he says or whatever, on the basic levels, he could have done just the simplest thing of, encourage masks, simple things like that. But I also look at like just overall that I think one thing this pandemic has shown, unfortunately, but maybe fortunately in a way, that our government doesn't care about us. Not one bit at all. Just not one bit at all. No mask. I remember just watching news where it's like Spain, they were handing out free masks outside the metros over there. I'm like, and then I read about a plan for the Postal Service to ship masks, everyone canceled. Other countries guaranteeing payroll, 80, 85%, 90%. US, you could just go on unemployment. Where so many unemployment systems are broke, don't work, are archaic. It was just one thing after the other that just reinforced for me why I need to leave. And so my 2-year plan is to get the hell out of here. I wish you all luck.
Thank you, Kevin. And so Lapita, and then also can you chime in on how is the Biden administration handling COVID-19?
Okay. If I just don't understand how we just went through a pandemic and people still aren't radicalized. I don't know what else we need to, what Kevin just said. I don't know what else we need to further prove that the government does not give a fuck about us. They just want us to work. And so with our local, like Trump, we already know he just undermined everything and it basically got us where we are. But locally, I mean, we did our best. No, we didn't. There was no resources. It was just like, here's a mask. Maybe if you have access to our centers, get a mask. and things got shut down. But then our governor got pressured into reopening things pretty fast, so our shutdown didn't last. We're only St. Paul, where I'm at, we're only 20 minutes away from Wisconsin. So it didn't really matter if we had things shut down or not, because everybody here was going to the bars in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin really did not give a fuck. And so that was how a lot of cases were going up, was because a lot of people in their 20s were going to Wisconsin, just a little short 20-minute drive, coming back and spreading it. And there was nothing against that. Our schools opened up before all the teachers even got vaccinated. But like I said, our vaccine rollout is a lot better now. But it's still just not, and the Biden administration, same thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure Harris had tweeted that we were going to get $2,000 a month. And even she had even said that even after the pandemic was quote unquote over, because she knew that this was going to have long lasting effects. And I don't think anyone's talking about the long lasting effects. And that should be more on the Biden administration now. And I personally haven't seen anything or heard anything about what's going to be done once more people are vaccinated, because I know myself, I know my clients, we still got shit to pay. And we're behind on a lot of stuff. So I don't think that they're handling it well at all.
Thank you. And Ricardo?
Yeah, as far as the Biden administration, if I had to grade it, it's D- to D+. There's really no comparison. You really can't really compare too much, because this is so new. But yes, to what Lupita said, Trump completely undermined everything. So, but I do appreciate, just on the face value, that I do not have to worry about what did my president say on Twitter. I appreciate that very much. And I do like what he is talking about in terms of the student loan cancellation. It's terrible that it's taken a pandemic for that conversation to come to the forefront now. But as far as in Chicago, what they've done with the National Guard and through the administration, that everyone's been able to get vaccinated, and it only took me 10 minutes from going into the gate to getting vaccinated. I don't think it would have been a lot worse without the Biden administration's help with that.
I think for me, I would look at it in two aspects when it comes to just handling COVID in terms of the vaccine rollout. I think it's been good. I think it could be better. I know they're touting oh, we're going to get 200 million in less than 100 days. And I'm like, you probably always knew you'd get that. So you undersold it so it could look really good for you when you got there. That's how it works. That's how it is. Always, say low so that when you overshoot, everyone's happy for you. My biggest issue with the Biden administration is that, like what Peter was saying last year, especially, during the summer, we had uprisings, we had protests, some violent, mostly peaceful, but we had people who were just really engaged. And now I feel everyone's gone back to sleep. They're just glad, Ricardo said, that I don't got to worry about hearing things on Twitter. Don't care. You had people who were doing well during everything that happened last year. People who were working from home, making more money, whether they were in stocks, or they're like, hey, I don't have to go into the office. I don't have to spend as much, so I'm doing better. And the people who were doing bad then are still going to be doing bad now. You have no rent relief. And I know a lot of people take issues with landlords because there are some really crappy landlords. But one thing that was reminded of me this week is kind of what happened after the housing crisis, where landlords didn't get protection. So what happened is corporations came in and swooped up all these properties. And so what did they do? They ended up jacking up prices. And so I have a feeling not only are you going to have people facing eviction because, there's no rent cancellation, you're also going to have homeowners and landlords are going to default. Corporations are going to come in and swoop in and buy, and it just strengthens the power of corporations. And I think this is very much what I look at as the Biden administration is just we're going to appeal on certain woke things, on certain things about culture and race, but underlying, we're not going to give you anything. We're not going to increase your minimum wage. We're not going to give you health care. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to relieve student debt like it promised, $50,000. Now maybe 10,000. Zero. That's what it's going to be. And these are what's really disheartening about this is some of these things are things that he doesn't need approval for at all, that he could just do. And the fact that he's doing not even like the bare minimum, like below the bare minimum, and is being praised for it, like, I don't have a lot of hope. I hate to say it like that. I just don't. Where you had everything that happened last year. One of the things that, and I hate to go off on like a tangent, but like I was so pissed off last year was when the NBA players boycotted those 2 games that one night. And everyone was so fearful that they were going to go and boycott the rest of the season. And then nothing. All that power there they had to make corporations suffer, make people with money and power be like, what do you guys need right here, right now, so you can go in there and make us money? Just absolutely wasted. And that's how I feel like the rest of this year is going to be, is just like people with power who could fight for us and do things for us aren't.
I wish that there would just be a little bit more awareness as to why Black and Brown communities are so hesitant to get it, and more like of the trauma behind Western medicine and the fact that we have been subjects to these sort of things. And like, I mean, I got the vaccine and I encourage people to, but with the clients that I work with who are predominantly Black and Latinx, like a lot of them don't want to get it and their fear is very valid. And I don't think our government has done a good job at just kind of identifying that and talking about it. And also just basic stuff like our testing centers here in the Twin Cities, we're barely in any other languages. So we have a huge Spanish-speaking community, but we have one of the biggest Somali communities in the whole nation, and Ethiopian, and their languages were not represented. We have a big Hmong community, which is they're Asian folks, and none of that. So we have a lot of immigrants here, and they just did a really bad job at translating stuff and interpreting stuff. And again, Kevin, you're talking about the bare minimum and stuff, and they're not even living up to that, and that's really fucking sad.
Thank you for sharing. And so with like right now, we're actually in the age of technology. We've probably been for the past like 5 to 10 years. And something that I've also noticed with this whole pandemic was that for example, my grandparents, my grandmother, for example, she wasn't actually able to, because she's not very tech savvy. And so she couldn't necessarily sign up for an appointment. We had to ask my aunts to sign her up. And so there's a huge disparity amongst old people that I found throughout this whole pandemic. Also, as a teacher, a lot of my students, they didn't necessarily have Wi-Fi, they didn't have hotspots, they didn't even have computer. And so I'm over here as a teacher, like, you're absent, you get a 0 for the day, you didn't turn in an assignment, all these other things, because like, that's like the cards I've been dealt with. But, after calling home, we figured these things out. We're fortunate enough to everyone has a computer now, everyone has a laptop, everyone has, if they need, so they got Wi-Fi, they're gonna get all these supplements. But these are things we didn't necessarily had on day one in preparation for going online. And so it's great to see that we have Zoom and we have all these other technology-based platforms. But for my question for you all is, how did you think technology and the age of technology performed over the past year?
I think a lot more people know about Zoom now more than ever. It's funny because I remember years ago it was all about Skyping, and now it's all about Zooming. And now Zoom will be, maybe it'll be different and we'll be all on Microsoft Teams. Speaking strictly, working corporate for about a year now, just using all the different technology I have. we're seeing a trend at, in my workspace, that if you do not have your technology skills up to par, if you are not being able to multitask like a teacher or a YouTube streamer where you've got multiple screens on, or a stock ticker person, you've got 4 screens on you, you're kind of like marked as like, well, we'll see what happens in the next round of cuts. My organization had to lay off lots of people, unfortunately, and they did it before holiday in particular. And those people, I knew working with them, they had challenges working with the technology early on, being remote. I'm used to it, so I was able to adapt very quickly. And I tried my best to, have everyone kind of learn from me too. But not everyone's going to be able to understand all these different, ways to communicate. So I think the technology has been pretty well, but whether or not people can adapt to it as quickly as, I don't want to seem ageist too, but at the same time, just knowing, hey, where's the best place to learn about Zoom meetings or the best practices of Zoom bombing, whether it be your LinkedIn Learning or your, different online spaces, or even a YouTube search, and just actively learning, that can do a lot of work. And I wish, my company said like, hey, here are the things you can learn from, instead of kind of just let everyone fend for themselves for that little bit.
I think it's twofold. In a sense, like technology always does well when it comes to making money. When it comes to someone's profit, a corporation or individuals. And that's why you have certain people who are able to transition their business either online or, work from home and all these things, or, make money with the stock market. But I think when it comes to like public services, I think technology has failed. For example, unemployment. When you see lines of people in Florida just to get a form to fill out for unemployment, I think in New York, we were lucky that, the website for New York works pretty well, but like, it's still not great. It's still confusing. And that's the best that I've heard or seen from most other states. Where websites don't work, they crash, you can't get in, there's no translations. I look at us also when it comes to COVID, when it came to contact tracing, not really great. And then now under this administration, completely kind of abandoned, where it's just like, we're just going to focus on getting a vaccine rollout and forget everything else. Scheduling vaccines, difficult if you're someone who doesn't know how to do technology, or even when I remember me and my sister were trying to do it for my parents, and a lot of times like website would crash, or it would say, the service was unavailable, and I'm like, what do you mean it's unavailable? Why can't we schedule through right now? Like, what's going on? So I think, this pandemic, in many realms, but especially this one, I think it has gone and shown that, there needs to be a much better job when it comes to technology, when it comes to servicing people and helping people.
I think that technology is a human right. And I think that this pandemic definitely showed that. And I don't think that even myself included really thought of it as a human right. But now we see that it's really needed for everything. Our students, our babies cannot thrive without internet. Our houseless folks cannot do much without internet. And it's needed. And we were able to provide, our youth who didn't have the technology needed for school, and we were able to provide them internet and stuff like that, but it still took a while. I had a lot of youth that were still behind almost a month or 2 months because it took a while to get it rolled out to them. And so, it played a huge, huge part of it. But then kind of going back to Kevin, what you were saying about the NBA and the stuff during the uprisings and the pandemic had a huge part on like the season and stuff, but technology has also been used to be very, very performative during the uprisings and the pandemic. It's been a lot of like, we're here for you, and like a lot of commercials that are like talking about the pandemic and like these sad stories and like grandparents FaceTiming their babies and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but where's the money though? What are y'all gonna do to help us out? So it's been performative as fuck. And so, I mean, I don't know. So performative and human right is all I gotta say about it.
Thank you, Lupita. For our next question now, how has your political, economic, and social awareness changed over the past year?
So as far as politics wise, definitely that's something I need to be a lot more educated on. I think I haven't really just drilled down like, what I feel about like, certain politics and everything like that. I'm very naive, definitely. And that's something I need to be educated on. But as far as economics and social awareness, speaking to what Kevin said, like the fact that we were, we're still in a pandemic, but then the news is filled with the stonks of GME and AMC and all this stuff, and people have to put in their dwindling 401ks to make it double, just so they can feel like, they have a nest egg that they can utilize. Because, early in the pandemic, I remember people were talking about, oh, well, it's okay. They'll just use their savings. They can handle it. Like, what savings are you talking about? We have student loans here. We've got rent here. We've got to feed ourselves. We got kids, rent. And it's not a cancellation, it's a postponement. The bill always comes due. So, where's the money you're talking about from? So that has provided me an opportunity to learn more about like just our own fractured capitalist economic situation that we have here, where it's like we're at a peak and we're gonna go down. That's why I feel that's there's definitely still some hope there. And as far as social awareness, just leveraging the technology wise, I'm able to just still communicate with, my family members and, a particular family member of mine. I had a niece who's now transitioning to male. And so I'm learning more about like, what a dead name is. So, she had a dead name, and now, I'm now knowing more about that as her being trans. And so that's very interesting to me. And it's particularly interesting because now I also have to educate, her father, who is like, old, it's like 70, not used to this, came from like the mountains of Ecuador. So this is very different for him to learn. And so he comes to me because I have a psychology background, and I'm like, well, psychology really doesn't train me for this, but I'm also interested to just have these conversations with you. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for this past year amongst those three things.
Thank you.
I gotta say, the fact that he's at least coming to you, and being open about like, hey, I want to be, or I want to understand more. And, instead of a lot of people who would like just do the complete opposite, I think is an amazing thing. And it's amazing that you could be there to be part of that and help. And so like, this kudos on that front. As far as me, my politics, I think prior to, I guess I would see myself as like a progressive leftist, and I'm more now like getting closer to being a socialist. I think political wise, I'm a poli-sci major. I've always been into politics, but just seeing how and understanding how our system works, and then seeing in this particular time when we needed government the most, see how it doesn't work, just really has gotten me to a place where I'm just like, you don't care about us. You're not going to really do anything about us. We're going to repeat this cycle over and over and over again, just over and over again. And, it's been very disheartening. I think socioeconomic wise, also, I've gotten more into understanding modern monetary theory and understanding exactly what our government can do with control of purse strings, and just seeing all the money that has been spent in the past year. All the money that has been spent in the past year. And instead of having inflation, you had deflation. I'm like, yeah, you could have spent money on a whole bunch of things for us. You could have spent money and given us healthcare. You could have spent money, or not even spend money. You could cancel student debt. You could spend money and give money to schools. You know, when we talk about, for example, the mass shooting we had the other day, you know, I'm a fervent supporter of gun safety, but I also know that it is socioeconomic inequality that creates the environment for crime. One of the biggest things is that. So you can work on just making our community so much better and our society overall so much better, but you have no desire, no political will to do so. So it's really gotten me to this place where I was just like I said, I have an exit plan. And it's a shame, not that I've had to do this, because I'm not going to ever stop fighting for people here. But I also know, like, I have to go where I know that my government would be willing to support me. You know, where you or we are here and we have a government that doesn't want to give masks, doesn't want to do this. And then we look at other countries, like, because, for example, with my sister giving birth, I remember showing her like videos of what it is in other countries, like in hospitals, the food that they get, that people come to your home and check on you like weeks afterwards, make sure you don't have postpartum depression, or like if you don't have enough things like Pampers. Even recently, I shared a video where the government in Tokyo gave a care package to people who had COVID, like 2 weeks of food, bottles of water, you know, like that's, and what's crazy about that is like, that's not even like the extreme, that's somewhat more of the norm outside. And so I realized that the US, we have been conditioned in such a way, pushed to rely on the, you know, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And when you don't got, you know, boots or strings, you know, like you have people suffering, you know. So passing a stimulus bill that gives these one-time checks, what does that matter when you have months of rent that are backlogged? You know, and a lot of people don't talk about the fact that because this check went through reconciliation, there was no protection against garnishment. If you owe bills, credit card or whatever, they can come and take that check. So it's like absolutely just, I don't know what to say. It's not that I've been awakened. It's been more like I see even more. And, you know, I see that with all the things that have happened, what is it really that is going to take for an awakening to be like, you know what, we're tired. You know, like we just can't take this no more. Because unfortunately, I don't believe the politicians, at least on, you know, in Congress, who are supposed to be, or I would say they are our allies, but I don't think we have any champions in government. Any champions are going to say, hey, if you don't have $15 minimum wage in this bill, we're not going to pass it. We're going to vote against it. No one's going to do that. So when is that going to happen for us? I just don't know. And so this whole year has just awakened me even more, and just, I don't know. I think the only thing I really can do is try to maybe educate some other people, or I had conversations with my sister, who is not really politically inclined, but who sees things herself and like, yeah, they don't care.
Thank you. And Lupita?
Yeah, I guess my views haven't really changed, so I don't know what you want to call me. My brother says I'm a communist. I don't know, but basically what Kevin's saying is just like an awakening and kind of waiting for other people to get on board. and I'm a Sagittarius. So I've been kind of going up to all my friends, or not even my friends, obviously your friends are kind of very like-minded, but like my family and stuff, and being like, I told you that this is what, the government just doesn't care. And so I think that has been, I guess, one of the silver linings to shit is that my parents and my brothers, I have 5 brothers, have been more so like, you're right, like this government doesn't care. And having those conversations with them, my family is from a small village in Mexico, or my parents are. And then they immigrated to Chicago, little village. And then from there, I came to Minnesota. And I've always been, me and my 17-year-old brother, because, this Gen Z TikTok generation is very aware of things and they're hilarious and I love them. But so him and I are the two that are very like, fuck everything, like fuck 12, like da-da-da-da, all this stuff. And our family has always been like, what the heck? My mom has always been like, what are you doing to him? And I'm like, it's TikTok, it's not even me. But it's just cool to kind of see everyone on board and like the family group chat, like actually being a chat of like people sharing articles and stuff. So that's been cool. Like I said earlier, if what's been happening for the past year hasn't radicalized you, then I don't want to say that you are choosing not to, but like you're kind of choosing not to like critically think. Sorry for cussing a lot. I've been doing that a lot. I don't know if there's rules.
No, there isn't. You good. All right. So for our last question, with the rise of anti-Asian hate, how can we as Black Indigenous people of color build solidarity with our Asian American Pacific Islander siblings?
I mean, I really can't believe what I see on TV regarding this, because like to me this is like just not natural to just hate like people in general, because like I've grown up with a Filipino family for forever. I mean, I call them my Filipino family. My mom knows, basically my mom got pregnant at like 19, and there was another young pregnant woman at like 20. She was Filipino, and they had babies together. That was me, and that was my cousin, and I just call her my Filipino family. And the idea of like there's this like hate to Asian people is like crazy to me, because like where is this coming from? Like does there always need to be an enemy? Is that what we need as people? I can't believe like where is this coming from? Like someone, and then you hear like, oh, he had a bad day. Like what the heck are you talking about? I can't believe what I'm hearing. This is one of the reasons why I have to like kind of stay away from social media and the television, and just like sometimes I just go back to like watching Mr. Rogers. Honestly, I just go back to the stuff that I used to use when I was teaching children, because like it reminds me to just, hey, look for the helpers. And who are the helpers? It's people like Francisco making platforms and spaces where we can talk, and all these other people. But unfortunately, that's not shown out in, the media. It's not on Fox News and so on, which I think would be very helpful. It's like, hey, I'm feeling a certain way. Where can I talk to? Where can I, people who are like-minded like me? Not these hate groups on Facebook. And, recently Facebook was talking to like, I think the Senate or Congress. They said like, hey, do you feel like you have any responsibility for these kinds of groups? It's like, yes or no question. And none of them gave a yes or no answer. It's always, well, Congressperson, we're a tool, and so it's really up to them whether, like, no. They're going to have to take some ownership in this.
I'll say it in this kind of really quick 2-point thing. I think, for example, when you mentioned Ricardo on social media, I had seen in, I guess, Black Twitter. I don't know if it's called Black Twitter, but Black Twitter. Someone had posted a comment where they were saying like, hey, Asians don't ride for us, why we should ride for them. And, I responded, I was like, you're right. More Asians should speak out when, Blacks and Latinos are facing racism and hate. But as I always say, like, we shouldn't look to what others do to determine how we should act. Our communities have been at the forefront of these battles. We need to support and we need to lead. So to go in and say like, hey, I'm not going to ride for them, let them do. No. Riding for them And fighting for them benefits us. When you fight for someone else, you fight for yourself. You fight for the next person, and so forth and so forth. So, I look at us as like Blacks and Latinos that, I love seeing such outpouring of solidarity that I've seen for so much for the community. The second thing I want to say is politicians always use moments like this for their own personal self-gain. And I bring up, I don't know if you heard about Tammy Duckworth, her and another senator were saying that, hey, to the Biden team, that if you don't put more Asians on your cabinet in positions, we're going to torpedo and not vote for bills. Now, it's ridiculous that she would go and say that. If she wanted to say, hey, we have these people who we think you should have there because we feel they're more qualified and they're Asian, that's awesome. But to go and take advantage of this moment and say that is absolutely disgusting. But the sad thing is, it's probably going to work because it's actually a use of power. And it's one thing that Blacks and Latinos and our politicians, our advocates, don't do at all. They don't do it all. They'll say hey, there are not enough Blacks, there are not enough Latinos, this and that, but they won't do a thing to change any of that and actually use power. So, yeah.
I guess the main thing for me would just be letting Asian folks have their voice. There's a lot of oppression Olympics or whatever you want to call it going on, the what about us, and Latinx play that card whenever Black folks have their moments, and it's just there's no point. And I feel like I've seen it from Latinx folks as well as Asian folks, kind of what Kevin was saying, whereas the Black community, this and that. And I think that we put things like this on the Black community a lot. And it's not fair. I don't know what big platform made this article, but it was what can Blacks do to stand with the Asian community, or what Black Americans can do to stand with Asian folks right now, or something like that. And it was just why is that the talk? If anything, I just want to follow the lead of Asian people in the community and kind of hear them out, because I know what I see on the news and, what I see locally and stuff like that, and what I hear from friends. But I don't necessarily know exactly what they want to be done. And so the most powerful thing that someone can do is listen, and then take that and actually do something about it. So yeah, just listen and actually do something.
So my question for you all now is, what were some of the lessons learned over the past year, whether all politically or just non-politically? Just what are some lessons you learned over the year?
So for me, non-politically, I think the biggest lesson I learned, being unemployed for those months and then going into this corporate job, was that, initially I thought I was going to be, this role and, very administrative. And then since then, I've gone ahead and just made it my own without them telling me what I need to do. So, this role was initially one way. Now it's this completely different way. And I'm recognizing, too, that the office space is definitely not, I guess it depends, but it really showed me how the emperor had no clothes. The organizations that you work in that have all these fancy spaces could really, all the work could be just done online. There was no need for hundreds of people to be in that office, to pay all that money on rent, to pay a seltzer machine that no one ever used, and have people sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. Not at all. The work I can do and lots of my other coworkers, it can be done within 4 hours. And since then, we have this extra time, and it's allowed me to recognize that, the financial anxiety that, I had and continue to have, but to a lesser degree, is not normal. I remember about always feeling like I needed to hustle, that hustle culture, find a way to monetize my hobbies, it allowed me not to even like those hobbies anymore. So just by even being remote, it's allowed me to just, you know what, just take a breath back, go back into, what I really enjoyed before I got wrapped up in the rat race of making money, and looking good for, further opportunities. Just work on my skill set, be myself, have your, build that authenticity back, because, that, it reminds me of, like, as children, we were our most authentic. And then it's not until lots of other streams of thought and perceptions are hit on you that you start to mesh and change. So it's really just going back to nature, is what I'm getting at, what I've learned.
I think for me, it's been more on the financial aspect of taking advantage of opportunities. For example, like I missed out on the .com bubble when that burst, the Great Recession when that, I was like, oh, I should get some stocks, but I didn't. And in this one, I was kind of like, whoa, when the market crashed, I'm like, is it going to crash again? So I waited a bit. Then I said, you know what, I need to get into this because, even with what I was making, a good salary in New York, it's still not enough. It's not enough to get out of the rat race. So for me, it was like, all right, hey, how can I, use the money that I've invested to pay me? How can I make money work for itself? And what more can I learn? And these are discussions I've been having with more of my family members, especially with, my sister having a newborn, and like, hey, how can we start putting money aside and investing now for him so that, when he hits 18, there's going to be money, there's going to be income coming in. So he has his own essential like UBI coming in, and then he can decide, hey, do I want to go to school? Do I want to work in corporate? Maybe I might want to work somewhere where I volunteer and don't make a great deal of money, but because I have money coming in this other spot, I can do what I want to, what my passion is. If I want to, help people or just whatever. And I think learning this has really gotten me geared towards being more in achieving financial freedom. And I think a lot of us, when we look at what's going on in the world, is like, oh, how can we get things done for us? I think having the freedom and the financial freedom to do what you want is probably one of the most liberating things that people can do. So one of the things we've also done with my fraternity brother, my chapter, is having dialogues like, hey, how can we work on getting your debt done, paying your credit card bills, or maximizing your 401k, your IRA, or HSA? Because I think once, especially your generation, with all the debt that you have on you, and like Ricardo was saying, the mindset of I have to monetize this, I have to hustle this to pay bills to just basically survive. When you can get out of that mindset and just free yourself, life becomes so much better.
For me, I guess it's just been a lot of personal lessons and growth because I've had to be alone a lot. And I never really took the time to be by myself before. I was always going out, whether it was like at a youth event or, just going to the bar, doing karaoke night. Like I was out literally every single night. And that's just how I was. And then everything got shut down, and I literally I started vlogging just to like see my progression. So I started vlogging and I was like, okay, like this is the first week of shutdown, and like this is how I feel, and I feel like I'm going insane, whatever. But then I started picking up on reading and like doing all these things and just doing a lot of self-reflection and journaling and stuff. So that's something, and just really taking this time to like, because all these things are coming to light, what's wrong with our medical system, what's wrong with our government in general, all this stuff, these things are being brought to light. It has really made me think about what I want to do. So like, I miss working with youth and the education system and stuff like that. And so this time has just been for reflection to see what I really, really want to do and work in. Cause right now as a caseworker, I don't want to keep doing that. So yeah. And then besides that, kind of what Ricardo was saying, like, fuck the 40-hour work system. Like, that shit is not needed. And there's proof. So we'll just see how things play out moving forward, because I don't see it going away, unfortunately. But the proof is there. But again, there's proof for a lot of shit and they don't give a fuck. So I don't know.
With that said, that is all the time that we have. Thank you everyone for joining us. And for everyone at home, make sure you like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and listen into our podcast platforms from Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Music. Also, comment below. Describe your COVID-19 experience. What resonates? Then follow us on all our social media outlets at Latin_entertainment. That is Latin_entertainment. Join the Support Latina Business Facebook group and check out our IG Lives every Tuesday and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. See you next week as we discuss decolonizing versus indigenizing. All here on Conversamos.
Yeah, yo, is it that wrong? I'm making a song, I'm taking it back for the platform that I formed. Music's helping me transform. I run the